So the only other last thing that I think would be really cool for people to have on these podcasts is and I came up with this sheet, and I'll have to share it with you. It's who we follow. And I go through like a whole segment of what it means to follow someone. Like on Twitter, it's just a simple clicking.
Hmm.
But if we took them out of the social networking stance and said, I'm going to line up these 50 people and they're going to start walking forward, if I stand behind them and follow them, that says something. So if I'm following these people on Twitter, it means something, right? It should mean something. Like I follow Cookie Monster, but like, does it really mean like I'm gonna, if Cookie Monster walked up, am I gonna follow Cookie Monster? So I think it'd be cool for us to have like one person or one group or something that we say, towards the end, like, hey, this is a person that we follow, or this is a person that I follow. Here's why. And every week or whenever, how often we do this, people are going to gain more Twitter. They're going to build a stronger Twitter base of people that they're following, that they can say, okay, that's where they're getting these ideas, or that's where these conversations are coming from. And it's for our students as well. I always try to tell my students the best thing you can do for your writing is just go out and study the world more, learn more about the world, because it will influence the way that you write every single time. But yeah, I just thought that would be a really cool way for us to highlight. I mean, I sometimes I follow people and it takes me a while to really figure out like they'll say one thing and I'll follow them and I'm like, is this somebody that I can keep following? And then I'll stop following them.
Yeah.
So I think it'd be cool for us to both have something that we bring to the table and we say, this is who I've been following, or even just a tweet that stuck out. We can just say, this is a tweet that I read this week, and it really struck me. So I started following that person and I really took what they said to heart. I think that might be pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think to start out, we might need to kind of explain how powerful Twitter can be.
Yes.
I for one, Twitter changed my career. It really legitimately did. I didn't join Twitter until I joined EdTech. And so it was just part of the gig. I joined Twitter. I had a Twitter account where I followed like, the Astros writers and all of that in the past. But I never tweeted anything. And then I started using it for work and I started following these educators. And there's this great graphic by Sylvia Duckworth that shows like an educator whose first year they're climbing the mountain and they're loving life and their kids doing great and they really, really love their job. But after 5, 6, however many years, they start to plateau and they're just kind of doing their thing. And then it comes up and it says, and then the teacher, the educator found Twitter and boom, and it just shoots straight up exponentially. And it's so true because it has really changed my life and how I've approached my job and how much I've learned. I mean, the amount of stuff that I've learned in the past 3 years being in this position and being on Twitter is unbelievable. It really, truly is so, so powerful. And I try to explain that to educators, and it doesn't always, a lot of times it's social media is the devil, and it's really scary. And so trying to explain that to people, I think, is very, very important, even though it's difficult for some.
Sure. And you're right. For me, I didn't really get into Twitter until I got into the curriculum department. I had one, but it was only for like, hey, students, don't forget your papers due tomorrow. Like this was before Remind 101.
Yeah.
And even then I used it more than Remind 101 just because most kids had Twitter at the time. And I remember when I first got Twitter, and I was still learning, and it was the pounds. It was before I knew it was called hashtag. And they were like, Mr. J, this is a hashtag. And you got to use it when you say certain things. And it just, and I was like, no, that's stupid. I will never use a hashtag. And like my bio was Mr. J's class, I refuse to use hashtags. And it took me a while. And then the first time I did it, I was like, I think it was as I started getting into the curriculum department, I was like, my goodness, there is value in these hashtags, and there's a creative sense too, and how you create those and how you put them out there. So 100%, I think a lot of classroom teachers don't truly value the power of Twitter because if they did, imagine what would happen if a teacher tomorrow put something like an article that they read and they're like, wow, this is powerful. And they put it on Twitter and the kid's checking on it Sunday night. And they come to class the next day and they're like, hey, miss, that article you put on last night on Twitter, like, really got me thinking. Can we talk about that?
Boom.
I mean, that's huge. And it was not, you didn't assign it. It wasn't part of a required set of a curriculum. It was, this is what I'm interested in as a person. It stuck out to me. You share it out there, and the kid's like, I didn't even think I was going to be interested in this, but now I am. So I think that should definitely be part of this, as much as often talking about Twitter.
Yeah, those conversations, those off-topic days, those conversations with kids, they learn so much more. Some of the most powerful conversations I've had with students had nothing to do with what we were doing in class. My last year in the classroom, I would do an extra credit assignment once a 6 weeks, where I would post it the first week of the 6 weeks, and they had all 6 weeks to do it. It was due by like the Wednesday of the last week. And it was just an article that I would pull that I thought that they would find interesting. And they would have to write a one-page response to whatever. And one of them was, Snapchat refused to be sold to Facebook or Twitter, whoever was trying to buy it at the time. One of them was when Paul Walker was killed, how that I told them, how does this affect the idea of street racing, and how does it affect, what students your age do or think or that. And I had some of the most powerful conversations. There were kids that just came in like during lunch and said, I read that and I haven't written my response yet, but here's what I think. And we would have this conversation all during lunch. And I was like, you don't have to write anything. You're good. This was amazing, And so, yeah, you're right. You just adding that medium, whether you're conversating with students, most of the time we're conversating on Twitter with educators and other people across the country. But I mean, sometimes those conversations that spur from those ideas, I can't tell you how many times in the past couple of years I've gone into the office and said, check out what I saw on Twitter last night or this morning or whatever, because the way I'm wired, pretty much the last thing I do before I go to bed is I'm laying in bed checking out, scrolling on my phone. And whenever I wake up, I pull up my calendar and then I kind of scroll through Twitter for a couple minutes to kind of wake up and see what's going on in the world. And so there's a lot that can be learned, and there's a lot that teachers can take from it.
Yeah, that's huge, man. Yeah, I like that. You don't even have to turn in your paper. You're good. Like, that's what we just did, is thinking. That's beautiful. And and our kids don't get an opportunity to do that enough. No. We don't get an opportunity to do that enough. So if we don't get it, imagine how little our students get.
Exactly.
Actually, you know what? I'm going to just tell people to follow NCTE, because I have lately really followed a lot of they'll put threads out there so somebody will be like, hey, looking for book recommendations for students who don't like to read. And then NCTE will retweet it and say, hey, community, help them out. So I think it's really great just to follow NCTE. So I might that's the people, because I've been retweeting a lot of their stuff lately.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
And when they retweet you, man, they retweeted me. I tweeted something. I still say post sometimes instead of tweet. I tweeted something about reading out loud and how powerful it is for men to read out loud to their young men.
That was awesome. That was really awesome.
Yeah. And NCTE retweeted it, and I was like, I'm famous. So anytime somebody like I think who was it? I think Kylene Beers retweeted something I said and laughed, put LOL and a smiley, a winky face at me, and I was like, what? This is Kylene Beers talking. You connect with people, and I've heard teachers do that with authors. I never got an opportunity to do that with my students, but I'll see that teachers just go on there and they're like, hey, Kwame Alexander, I have a class of 20 boys and they really love your book. And then he's like, cool, I'm going to send you 5 copies or whatever. He just interacts with people. And I was like, man, Twitter, man, is powerful.
It really is. I mean, Kwame Alexander was at one of the middle schools we were
Yeah.
at just that long ago, and not that long ago. And, stuff like that gets set up through Twitter. And even if it's not, there's so many authors and people who care about students' educations that can do stuff like this, where even if it's just a Skype call and they're talking to someone, the students get to interact with those people. Oh my gosh, talk about learning experiences and things you don't forget. And I mean, that's unbelievable what social media and all the stuff that we have can do for our kids and for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I benefit for it more now than I have in the past. I don't know how long I've had Twitter, but I've benefited more now in the past 2 years, in the past 6 months than I have in the whole time I've had it.
Yeah, my wife was learning about digital storytelling for her students. And so she was trying to create some ideas, some plans for digital storytelling. And she found this amazing video on YouTube when she was just searching digital storytelling. And she said, come here, watch this. And so it was this 2-minute video about student creation and digital storytelling. And I was just totally moved by it. And so I look at the author's, the creator's name, and first thing I do, my default is I search him on Twitter. And I go in and I search, and I posted, awesome video by this guy, and I tag him and I start following him. And 4 minutes later, he's replying and retweeting it and saying, this is, thanks so much, and this and that. And my wife turned to me and said, that's awesome. You just watched this video and you connected with this person that you had no idea existed, and now you're conversating with this person who created this awesome thing. That's amazing what Twitter can do. And I think she joined Twitter that night. Wow. Because it's crazy how you can connect with folks just so quickly.
Well, yeah, and that is, to me, when people say utilizing technology in the classroom, that's what it means. It's not a checklist of, oh, I used a PowerPoint today, so I'm using technology, right? Like, that is the epitome of using technology to your benefit, because that's free. It's a free resource, and you are gaining so much from that free resource that will continue to spiral into your life, not just into your classroom, but into your life, which does trickle into your classroom. Absolutely. That, to me, is incorporating technology in the classroom.
Absolutely.
So, all right. So for me, and I want to make sure I get their what's the handle? Is that Twitter handle?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's at NCTE, which is the National Council of Teachers of English. And I am recommending to follow them. One, because I follow them, but two, because if you ever have an idea in your classroom or you're trying to find a resource, if you tag them in your tweet, sometimes they will retweet you and say, hey, community, we need help here. And you'll get like hundreds of responses, and you'll have more than what you were probably thinking you were going to get. So if you don't follow NCTE, and you're just getting started out on Twitter, that's one that I definitely would recommend that you follow.
One person that I follow on Twitter that is unbelievably powerful, and he's somebody that has thousands and thousands of followers, but he is a principal of a school here in Texas, and his name is Todd Neslony. I hope I said that. He's Tech Ninja Todd. If you've ever seen him on Twitter, it's at Tech Ninja Todd. And he is all about students reading and writing and finding ways to reach the students and use all these tools that we have. He has a chat that he does every week called Tell Your Story. And it is so powerful. I really enjoy seeing what he posts and the people that interact with him. And he is, because he has such a huge following, that when you involve discussions, when you get into discussions with him, there are so many people that are reached. There are so many people that are involved and get involved in the conversations. And so he asked a question the other night. I say the other night, it was a couple weeks ago, said, if you could compare yourself to one character ever that you think you are closest to, or who you would like to meet, who would it be? And I think I said, as much as I would love to meet Dean Moriarty and Sal Paradise. I find myself closest probably to Jim Finch, and and so it's being able to find that and discuss that, and that led to a whole other conversation about these literary characters and how they relate to me. And I can think of, like, if I were an English teacher, I feel like that would have been my warm up. I don't care what we're doing today. I don't care what is in the curriculum. The first thing we're talking about today is, what's a character in a book that you've read that you would compare yourself to, or who would you like to meet the most? And so Tech Ninja Todd does so many amazing things, and has he's a really good person to follow and check out. He's a good one.
That's so two things. One, I want to follow because I don't follow Tech Ninja Todd, so I want to follow. But two, I'm also learning about you that you have a beatnik spirit, and I didn't know that. You mentioned Kerouac earlier, and now you got Moriarty. So that's awesome.
Yeah. My I love all of those books. I always have. That's been one of my favorite times, and so I can read anything from that era.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. That's awesome stuff. I actually have on the road on my nightstand. There's a few books that I keep on my nightstand at all times, and that's one of them.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's great. So awesome, man. Well, I gotta follow that guy because that sounds pretty awesome.
Yes, absolutely.